And of course, with us every week is the Gagne West, our producer, Ryan Gagne, also from the Farm Baseball Performance Institute. And so we want to kick to today's top of the order. Okay, top of the order is a very topical issue, not an issue, but a story, right? Which is Tiger Woods. So I wanted to get, as soon as this, unfortunate event happened with Tiger and he got into this horrific car crash. There's lots of speculation still. I know a lot of the information's out, but we have at least a better understanding today, Thursday, February 25th, on what the actual injuries are. And Kevin, it sounds like pretty gruesome. I remember at first we were hearing like compound fractures, but then Ryan was telling me that it's actually something else, not compound fracture, but like a fracture where your bones basically just shatter, right? And so just a bunch of mush going on there in at least one of his legs. I know it's like there's no easy answer for this, but just like if we just take a stab at it and kind of what do you think he's obviously looking at multiple surgeries. What's a rehab for something like that even look like?
Well, we have a couple of one professional player that has gone through something similar that has just come back to play football, and that's Alex Smith. That was essentially one clean clean is probably a terrible word, but one clean break, a compound. So for those, listening at home, a compound fracture is essentially when the bone actually breaks the surface of the skin. Okay. So, Tiger, it sounds like, had at least that, maybe more surface areas of the skin. So the immediate thing that we have to worry about when that happens is infection. We have no idea how long Tiger was down there until he was rescued, timeline. When that, infection is everywhere. So as that, there's blood, there's, this bone is, gruesomely sticking out of part of your muscle and infection. That's just like, the infection bugs are like, hey, weigh in, let's go. So that's the immediate thing. And that might not even show up immediately. Okay. That might just, like in Alex Smith's case, festered for a while or, a couple days, and we don't know, So that's the first thing. They have put rods, pins, screws, apparently a rod in his tibia. So that, the rod is going to be stronger than the original leg. I mean, it's like titanium rod, Right. So let's just say we've put everything back together. Okay. All the bones are together. Everything's ready to go. Infection is under control. He would be looking at a minimum 6 to 9 months of rehabilitation. Okay. First and foremost, the swelling of the leg is going to be right. A ton. And I believe, Ryan, he has had a procedure to his soft tissue to release some of that, right? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, there was trauma to the muscle and the soft tissue, which required a surgical release to relieve the pressure and the swelling. Yeah.
So what happens? You have this covering over your muscle called fascia. If you've ever, taken chicken out of a wrap, okay, and you've got, everyone knows it's the chicken skin. No. That's not the chicken skin. The chicken skin has, feathers connected to it. That's muscle fascia, right?
It's like cellophane almost. Right? Yeah.
And that doesn't move very well, right? It doesn't move, right? So now you have a buildup of all this swelling, and it pushes against that muscle fascia. Number one, it's incredibly painful. So what they do is they go in and literally cut it and allow them, it's kind of like Rocky, cut me, Mick. They allow the muscle to swell, right? So that it's not painful. And then once that dissipates, now we've got scar tissue, we've got possible infection, we've got, is the titanium rod the exact length? Do we have a leg length discrepancy? So there's all of these factors that go into, but we have the Tiger Woods factor. He's Tiger Woods. He's had 5 back surgeries. He's had ACL surgery to knee. And guess what? He came back. All right. So, everyone's like, oh, is he going to play golf again? Yes, Tiger Woods is going to play golf again for sure. Is it going to be on the PGA Tour? We don't know, but it's Tiger Woods.
Whoa.
I know my phone, right? Is Tiger Woods, is going to play golf? Without question, Tiger Woods will play golf again.
The key is maybe not professionally.
Right. The key is we know with professional golf is you've got to walk, and that's going to be the key. It's not going to be. I'm telling you, it will not be hitting balls. It won't be any of that. He will definitely get past all of that. He's Tiger Woods. He'll be able to hit golf balls. He'll be able to practice. But can he be on his feet, 4 to 5 hours and walk all the different terrains of the golf course and his leg not swell up like a balloon, with Alex Smith's case and nothing. I mean, Alex Smith, if there's a 60 minutes on what he did, it's just incredible. But it's over in an hour. He's not on the field for 4.5, 5 hours moving around on that leg. So I know you made a comment before we went on air that, golf isn't technically a sport. But, if you get, show up to the golf course at 10 o'clock for your 1:15 tee time, you're on your feet. You're doing all this kind of stuff. Then you got to go out and walk. Is he going to recover from that?
Yeah, you're talking about a golf course on the PGA Tour that averages about 7,200 yards, which is 4 miles a day, right? And if you make it all 4 days in the tournament, you're playing 72 holes of golf, you're walking 16 miles in addition to hitting all those golf shots.
Is that what it is? 16 miles? Wow.
Yeah. 4 days.
Which is the equivalent of like a charity walk. So I think you're just reinforcing.
Well, it is, and I mean, it's this terrain. I have, as you guys know, I mean, I'm a golfer, and I need a new knee. I can tell you, just getting off of a green and having either that uphill or downhill climb to the golf cart, that's challenging when you've got like orthopedic issues. But I get into a cart, it's over.
And you're not playing the courses that these pros are playing,
right?
Which are a lot bigger slope and right, exactly.
Absolutely. I don't think Tiger's going to be allowed to take a cart. He might. I mean, it might. Who knows? But there have been golfers that have won lawsuits against the PGA. And Ryan, can you tell the audience who that was?
Yeah, it was Casey Martin back in the early 2000s. He was born with a circulatory disease, which really kind of affects him walking great distances. He effectively sued the PGA Tour, went to the Supreme Court. They granted him the right to take a golf cart out during his professional rounds. He played a few more years. I think the last time he used a cart was at a major tournament in 2012, I believe it was. So again, there has been precedence. That said, I mean, he sued under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Again,
right.
He was born with this. This is an injury. We'll kind of see how that plays out if and when it ever goes down that road.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just like, obviously this is going to be a disability. Tiger would be able to get, let's just, talk about normal people, would certainly be able to get the handicap sticker for his car, all of that. But would that be considered a disability on the PGA Tour? Because this is really technically an injury.
Is that even a problem? I mean, he's got enough money. Like, he's a gazillionaire. I mean, why not just pay give him a piggyback ride throughout the course? I mean,
well, we can go back to the, why would Tiger in a car alone without security or without a driver drives me insane. Right. But, for those listeners who watched his documentary, why Tiger Woods is in that car alone. That the demons are going to drive him to even probably harder now to get back to playing golf, because someone's going to say that he can't do it. And there's already people saying that he can't do it. And Tiger channels that. And it just spins and spins and spins, So I wish the guy luck, man. I mean, I think if he came back and people responsible for getting him back should be praised to no end. And I think it would be great for the game. But it's too early to tell right now. And I think right now the biggest thing is infection for him.
Yeah, and one quick aside to that, a disability must be an injury that turns into a lasting problem for greater than 12 months. So
is that what the PGA Tour says, or is that what the ADA?
That's what the definition of the disability by the ADA. So again, in theory, if this is going to be a lingering problem for him for years to come, it would presumably qualify as a disability. So he could potentially have the same suit that Casey Martin had.
Well, I mean, I have one question for you, Kevin. So you talk about the infection thing. So is that something that happens like in a, so one of those things like, hey, if you get past the first X months, could that happen during his rehab?
Infection. So anytime there's an open wound, right, or anytime there's anything like that, infection can come in and it could lay dormant. It can go into its apartment and hang out there for a while, and it can come in and be like, okay, next Tuesday's a good day, and boom.
That's crazy.
So I mean, and that's why infection is so. And believe me, I'm not a infectious disease person. I've just had to leg infections. I can tell you, they don't know where it comes from, and when it gets turned on, especially like in Tiger's case, like with like lower leg and like staph, MRSA.
Right.
There's actually, I had an infection called strep in my leg, believe it or not, strep A. And I can tell you that you've got literally about a few hours.
What?
Yes. So you got about a few hours to recognize that you have infection, and you've got to get treatment for it like rapidly, because it will, if it turns septic,
right,
it kind of goes up and okay, we're over here, and then once it gets past the point where it's septic, that's not where you want to be. And one of my infections, I kind of waited like, oh yeah, I'm fine, and even the doctor was like, oh, we'll send him home, like he's fine. And I was literally right to the point of being septic. And when you get septic, that's how people die. Their organs shut down, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the infection is nothing to mess around with. I can tell you from personal experience.
So, well, we'll keep an eye on Tiger.
I wish the guy well, man. I hope he does. I mean, I hope the guy, I hope he,
arguably the best ever, right? I mean, I think you have a lot of people that will say that he's the best ever. I know. So
yeah, and he's got, we know he's got.
I wanted to see a little more of him.
He's got demons. There's no doubt. I mean, you watch that HBO thing. Tiger has demons that were, whether that was nature or nurture, certainly tons of nurture. The father, the parents. Like you said, he's got gazillions of dollars. He go off into the sunset. And have teach ball
I want one more career win. I just want one more. Give him his sole spot on the top of the PGA leaderboard. He's tied right now with Sam Snead, 82 professional wins on the tour. Would love to get him one more.
All right, so there you guys, fans. You have fans of him wanting. I want the guy to come back. I want to win the Masters again. I thought 2019 was one of the greatest sporting events I've ever seen.
Gaming event. So
gaming event, whatever you want to call it. I just wish. I mean, believe me, 20 years ago, did I like Tiger? No, not at all. I thought he was a conceited SOB. But after looking in the other side of the equation as to why he is or what happened and his drive, I wish the guy well, man. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that for me, just as again, I'm not a golf fan, but I would watch him. I would watch him when I knew that he would be on TV, and so he changed the sport in a lot of ways too. I mean, just in terms of the fan base and the getting younger kids involved, and so yeah, I mean, he's obviously a very influential. I mean, he's an historic level guy. I mean, he's someone that'll be talked about for years and years to come. So yeah, I wish him the best too. But speak so we can kind of this is a nice shift here. We get we go from talking about the game into actual sport. And we're going to talk to a little bit about softball. Ryan's shaking his head. Hey, there's no defense, buddy. You got to have defense. You have to have someone trying to stop what you're doing.
Oh, for it to be a game.
That's one of the
It's sport.
criteria. Yes, one of the criteria. You know, if
So someone's got, well, yeah, gravity.
yeah, if you had like an offensive line and there's a defensive line trying to block that drive, all right, yeah, you got an argument, 100%. But look, the other thing too is like, you know, everyone I know gets better at the sport the fatter and older they get. Like that doesn't happen in like basketball, you know. Anyway, that's another. I would love to debate anyone that wants to debate that at another time, but that's been my stance forever. And not that I don't play it. I play it, but look, I play darts too. You know what I mean? I play pool. I don't say I'm an athlete because I'm playing.
Well, I was gonna say, if it's not a sport, are they athletes or no?
No. Have you seen some of these guys? Come on, dude. They're like 100.
You can go the other end of the spectrum.
320 pounds. What do you mean? What's the other end of the spectrum?
Guys like Bryson DeChambeau, you know, guys like Rory McIlroy, guys
Never heard of them.
All right.
Rory McIlroy. Rory McIlroy looks like every other guy that I used to see when I worked at the Kells, you know, 20 years ago.
Oh boy.
So anyway, great golfer, right? I mean, look, it's a skill. Don't get me wrong. It's just we just get too loose with some words like great, right? Oh, this guy's great. He's great. She's great. Like great isn't great reserved for like Hall of Fame level stuff. And the same thing with sports, you know, ultimate Frisbee, people call that a sport. And by the way, better argument for ultimate Frisbee than golf, but whatever.
Oh, here we go.
There is. I mean, I don't like it. I'm not a fan, but I'm just, you know, saying, look, I'm trying to be objective, but
we're going to get hate mail.
That's all right. I'm half joking.
And that's info@proveitlive.com.
And half serious.
Attention, Mike Frary.
The definition of a sport is an activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment.
Was that Wikipedia?
Merriam-Webster.
Oh my God.
So, heard of them.
So all right. So let's change it to competitive sport. All right.
Oh boy.
I mean, because what you just said, that, you know, what other things would fall in that category is like swimming. Right? Swimming's not a sport. Swimming is how you survive in water, so you don't die. Right.
So swimming is
we're moving into a Seinfeld bit right here.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, who's the best at surviving in water?
It's like a boat capsized, and he was surviving with the backstroke when the Coast Guard found them.
That's awesome. All right. So,
what are we talking about next? Come on, we have something.
So I wanted to talk about, you know, Kevin and I both agreed. Now, there's a couple of topics I want to touch on today. And there's some we're going to talk about softball. There's a little bit of crossover in baseball, but for good reason. It all makes sense. And we have a segment coming up. We're not going to do it today, but we have a segment that we're going to be doing going forward, based around the math of the sport, math of movement. You know, Kevin always says, you know, movement is math. All the things that we would teach at our facility, you know, 90+% of the things, it's all really math related, math and geometry. And we'll get into what that means and why. And we'll even touch a little bit on today in regards to the swing, the baseball and the softball swing.
It isn't geometry math.
It is. That's
I want to be specific now. Sport, game. I want to make sure we're right on.
Yeah, my sport game thing's really just to get people riled up. But so softball, you know, so you know, we've been in our facility for 11 years, going on 12 years, 5 years in our new one, which is just a little bit slightly bigger than we had before, that we opened in 2010. And we had baseball programs all that time. I've been, you know, coaching baseball for 20 plus years now. We just recently, and by the way, in that time, you know, I worked with a lot of softball players individually, independently, but we were never really involved in the travel softball world. We are now. We're a couple of years into our foray into the softball world, and from my observation, and now that I'm really sort of, you know, delving into it, it's really interesting. It's a lot, you know, as nearly identical as the two sports are. right? I mean, as Neil, you have someone that's never seen this either sport ever before, you show them both, they're gonna look the same, right? So as identical as they are, there's so many differences, and the big difference that I see, it's not on the field, it's in the approach to how it's coached. It's like the Wild West. It's really, especially on social media, and we'll get to one of our segments later. The why would you do that? You'll see a little bit more what we're talking about, but I think there's a real massive need in softball in terms of proper throwing instruction, and then also with hitting. In terms of throwing, Kevin, I see girls, obviously they don't overhand pitch, they underhand pitch. But now we know that you don't have to be an overhand pitcher to injure yourself, to hurt your elbow. And what I've seen with the softball players, a lot of the girls, I don't know what it is yet, and we're really working on trying to find out why, but they all have a real similar problems. They all try to push the ball. Their elbows are always really low. Sometimes they get way back and they'll come underneath, and their elbow will drop below shoulder level, and they push the ball. And I don't know what it is that is, or I should say, I don't know why it's softball. Obviously, I don't think it's the size of the ball or anything like that. So is there anything that, anatomically speaking, that would make girls, which I know you've seen it too, and we've talked about it. What's your take? Like, why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a few things going on. Obviously, girls are built differently than boys. I don't mean just anatomically. I mean, so we go back to we go back to the kinematic sequence, right? And my 3 pillars of movement, which is a proper squat, scapular depression, and walk. Meaning that everything happens from the belly button in a rotational manner. I just don't see that coming naturally in women as it does in men.
Okay.
So I think that women kind of lose that kinematic sequence at the end, and that arm seems to start first rather than last. And that seems to be when I'm retraining women to throw. That's the last piece that you've got to, everything's got to finish, and we still have the arm. They want to really be arm first. And once you go arm first, then you're backfilling the sequence of movement. And that's why it looks sometimes a little strange, and sometimes it's not, it's very difficult to coach, because we really have to back them way, way back to get them to be in the proper mathematical sequence.
So when we're teaching throwing, right, we like to go from the end of the throw.
Yep.
If,
and then rewind.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we go, the very last thing you do is to kind of your wrist will flick, and you sort of pronate a little bit.
That's a great drill.
Right. And then, we include the forearm, and then we include the arm forward and down. Right. And we'll maybe activate some front side too. And then we'll add the rotation or whatever. And the reason we do that is because it's hard to do, especially something like throwing, which is, it's really sort of an instinctive thing, right? I mean, a 2-year-old picks something up and throw it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you're going to have an arm action, arm motion, whatever that may be. And I think if for those that aren't trained properly, that just stays. So is there something about the idea of the elbow, like wanting to be below shoulder level? Because because we see it in little kids too. If we get like a 7-year-old, right, they'll typically throw at their elbow, good 8 inches below their shoulder.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like an exact that's the reason, but we go back to control of the shoulder blade. When you're first taught, at least you and I were first taught to throw. We had this like T position, right? It's uncomfortable, number one, and obviously, if you're being taught the T position, stop right now.
Yes.
and please find someone online or contact us, because that is not where you start to throw. That is, we'll just leave it like that. So, when it's just, I think, a sequence thing. I think regardless of where it starts, right? If it starts, you have to fix the equation. So, man, woman, child, wherever they are in the equation, of throwing, you need to fill in the correct movement to get them to, at the end, like you said, this is how we finish. And wherever it is when we backfill it, if something's wrong, you've got to work on that piece and put it back in the equation. Start at the end. We have that piece. Good. Now we're missing that piece. Start at the end. It's a great drill to start at the end and work backwards.
Okay. So all right. So if that's the case, if it's nothing that it's, that the body just wants to do, or if it's something that's instinctive, I hear a lot because people say, look, throwing such an unnatural overhand throwing, such an unnatural motion. I'm
I
like,
hate when they say that.
I know. And I used to buy into it. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But then I'm like, well, wait a minute. No, you see like babies throw things overhand. They don't, if it was so unnatural, they would only just throw it underhand. Right. But they throw stuff overhand. So,
Of course.
and, I mean, as humans, we've been throwing rocks and, whatever,
Everything, right.
spears and whatever. So, yeah, I don't think it's unnatural. Now, to do it properly, to do it, in a healthy way, is something else, and that's sort of where we come in. And I was saying to Kevin, just as we were talking about this, not on the podcast before that, when our program was smaller, we really could do this at the program level and really, really drill in those throw mechanics. But as the programs get bigger, you have more kids to work on. You got more stuff to teach. You have to do hitting and fielding and all this other stuff and strength training. It gets harder. And so, you really have to do this on a one-on-one basis. This is something you would have to work on every day,
Absolutely.
right. I mean, and when I say every day, like at least every day you're training. So if you're training 3 days a week, which you should be, you got to work on it every single day. And of course,
that's not just like, it's not, as it's not just softball players. I mean, there's, literally, well, yeah, absolutely. The same thing happens. It might just be a different mechanical flaw, but you've got to work every day.
Yeah. And so, with baseball, we see more drag, like they leave their arm behind, right? And the softball, we see the low ball, we see both, right? And so point is, it's an issue. It's a bigger issue in softball. Now with baseball, you see a billion opinions, right? And we've used this as a topic on the podcast before, is that the social media has had a huge impact on the sport of baseball. It's having a huge impact on the sport of softball. And you have people, arguing, fighting out there, talking about what's the right thing to do in terms of throwing. And, you see that trickle into the softball a little bit now, which again, we'll get to. But where this isn't everything that we're going to teach in terms of a throw or a swing, as we mentioned before. It's not an opinion. It's math. Kevin's going to tell you that movement is math. I'm going to tell you that mechanics are math. And I'll use an example because this is happening both in baseball and softball as well, is the swing. The huge thing right now is you might already know if you're paying attention to social media, is launch angle, right? Get the ball up in the air, launch it, launch. And what that is done, and by the way, launch, you do want the ball in the air. You do want a proper launch angle. You want to be between 27 and 31 degrees in that range, right? Because that's how the ball is going to get out into the outfield. It's going to create loft and it's going to get out, right? But what that has done to a lot of people who don't really understand how to get that is it's done a lot of wacky things to swings. Now, one of the old, it's as old as the games themselves, is the quote unquote debate. It shouldn't be a debate, but the quote unquote debate between the baseball and the softball swing, right, Kev? And people would say that they were different for a long time. Well, they're not. They're not different. And it's basic. You want to use your legs and your core to swing the bat, the big muscles to do the job, the hands are just to guide the bat. Keep the
Mikey, when did that change? Like, when did that?
That's a great question.
Change. Like, when did everyone say, oh, they're the same, or they have to be the same? Because I remember, like, especially the women would be like, especially left-handed, would have this like almost drag bunting type swing, where they're trying to drag bunt it or push it to the other side. That's
still sort of hanging around the sport, but it's not. You're right. You used to see that all the time.
Right.
You'd see like 4 girls in the lineup that would hit that way, and that changed. Ryan, could you look up, when did Crystal Bustos? When was she? Was that early 2000s? Because I asked that because she's the first one I remember having a baseball swing.
Baseball swing. Okay.
Right. Big strong girl, but she had a really good swing, and she just launched, softballs, and beautiful swing.
Yeah.
You got that right?
She started, I mean, if you look at just like a list of accomplishments, I mean, gold medals going back to 94, the ISF World Championships, up to silver medalist at the Olympics in 2008.
All right, so early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking. So right around then is when she came in, and then I think a lot of girls saw her and emulated her, and then some coaches. Also, and I'm I don't want to say this with any real confidence because I don't know exactly, but from my recollection, that's also around the same time, the early 2000s, when you get a lot of crossover coaching. You get a lot of guys from the baseball world, assistant coaches, bench coaches, etc., and started taking softball jobs. So what's his name? Walton down in Florida, the head coach at University of Florida for many years. I believe he's still there. He came from the baseball world. He came from maybe Stetson. Anyway, but so I think that's when it happened, Kevin. And now I think the reason why it's really taken off is because now all the things that we would teach, us at the farm and coaches that taught hitting like we do, we knew it was the right way. We'd studied major league hitters, etc. Now we have actual science and metrics to back it up. So now we're, those methods. And again, we hate the word philosophy because it's not a philosophy. I didn't make any of this up and invent any of this. This is math, right? So now we're actually validated. And last thing I'll say is that, when you're the whole point is to, again, swing fast. The fastest way you're going to swing a bat is by using the bigger muscles of your body to do so. You want to stay behind the ball as long as possible, or in the zone as long as possible, to maximize your chance of barrels and minimize your swing and misses. And then also it's to be on the plane of the ball and to drive through it. Again, same thing. So if we have, and for people just listening, if you have a ball coming down now, a baseball fastball, right, comes at a -8 to -10 degree angle. You want to match that plane. You want to be in the -8 to -12, and I go up to 12 because breaking balls and etc. And there's variation, but you basically want to stay behind that ball and lift it. The other thing we now know about hitting that we didn't know 20 years ago really was the spin and the effect that the spin has on a ball. Spin is huge. You want to have a 2,000 plus RPM, between 2 and 3,000 RPM spin on your ball, backspin. That's gonna create distance. If you square that ball perfectly, you're not going to get that spin. So we actually want to hit slightly below center to get good spin, stay on the plane, and that's going to equal a 25, 30 degree launch. Same thing for baseball, same thing for softball. And you might say, well, softball, wait a minute, those girls pitch underhand. It's not the same. It's the same, all right, within 2 degrees ish, because as soon as it leaves the hand, it's gravity takes over. Gravity starts taking over right away. And so their swing plane is actually the same in baseball and softball. And this is something that, it's, like I said, it's not like a secret that we're letting out, but
right,
still a thing that's sort of debated.
And from my end, I will tell you the throwing mechanics are exactly the same as well. There's no different. I mean, obviously, talk about pitching is different with the underhand versus the overhand, but the third baseman in baseball and the third baseman in softball should be throwing the exact same way. It's exactly the same thing.
That's right. And by the way, I had a message come in. Jason says what we were talking about, Kevin, is slap hitting. Obviously, he says still softball. Jason, I disagree a little bit with you on that, because I can tell you that, going back to my high school days and even college days, half of the lineups, I mean, you'd see, we go to tournaments now, if we have 6 games, I don't know if we see more than 2 or 3 girls getting up there to slap hit. So I think it is definitely starting to wane a little bit. And look, and you're going to have coaches that have hung around all these years too. And a lot of them aren't just going to change their philosophies or the way they coach or the things they believe in. But the newer ones, I believe, are, they're understanding the metrics. They're understanding, the things like Rapsodo and blast motion and, diamond kinetics and those things. And the exit velocities, the hit tracks, etc. Those things are all playing a major, major role in baseball. They're in softball now. I don't think they're as big from what I've seen yet, but they're getting there. And so that's what sort of has changed the game in a lot of ways. The throwing, other hand, as you said, Kevin, though, it's like we don't have the same thing for throwing other than, pitched balls, right? We have pitch ball gadgets, right? We have Rapsodo for pitching as well, not just hitting. In fact, they started with pitching. But it's not the same. Like for second base, third base, positional players, we don't have that sort of thing. When we do, I think you'll see a big sort of revolution in that as well, hopefully, because that's where a lot of injuries are coming from, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Good, Mike. Good. All right. What's our next segment? What's next? What do we got?
All right. Well, Ryan, you want to go to our, I think you should start taking over the TWIC. This weekend questions.
This weekend. So I remember This Week in Baseball. I love that show. Mel Allen.
Great show.
That's what. Oops. Sorry.
All right. So we have questions. What do we got?
Well, we had a couple that we were debating on. So which one did you guys want to lead with?
Let's go with yours.
Here we go. What we got?
So there's a lot of talk about pitch counts nowadays, right? This could go down, a couple of rabbit holes. But yeah, a lot of people talk about pitch counts. Is pitch count something that should be implemented at what age? What's the right number? What are all the different factors? And it's something we get a lot in our program. So I thought it would be worthwhile to discuss.
Gav, you want your first? Want to take the first?
Well, again, any movements done correctly, pitching wise, where we are accelerating the arm downhill, not against gravity, you can pitch a lot. That 100 pitch mark that doesn't mean anything. Now, that's probably 0.001% of the population are actually throwing the ball correctly downhill, or I wouldn't have a job. So, it could be, especially the little leaguer guys, we have to really be aware of how often they're throwing, how much they're throwing, how many pitches they're throwing, because, again, we had talked about this in the previous show. Your typical 12-year-old could be playing in their town league, playing in an AAU, and playing on some special elite team. And as a pitcher, they're going to want him to throw in all of those town leagues. So he could be throwing 3 to 4 times a week. Now, again, if done with proper mechanics, and that should be okay. Now, if he's throwing, 100 pitches, no, that's an issue. But I think you should be making some, and Mike, you and I have talked about this, throwing daily, definitely throwing daily. But if we had to put a red line on it, I think for little leaguers, that 50 to 60, high schoolers, that's, 60 to 75. And then the big kids, we can do that 100, I think are good numbers, just as a parachute to stop what I got a call last summer from a mother who's AAU kid threw 140 pitches in the game, but it was okay because the AAU coach said he went and play golf afterwards, so his arm must be okay. So it's stuff like that they're in there to stop crazy coaches from throwing these kids
right
every 2 seconds.
That's an interesting take because I like that take because that makes sense to me. In my experience, it's definitely had a positive effect in terms of it's given some guidelines to, like you said, to coaches who just don't know better and maybe aren't even tracking, right? They're just going to pitch that kid as much as they can. And maybe if you have a kid that doesn't speak up or, parents who are too quiet, that kid could get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's, in some ways, it's given sort of a false sense of safety Because, I've heard parents who coach Little League talk about stuff like this, like, well, we can throw, little Johnny on Thursday. Well, he pitched Tuesday. Well, yeah, but we specifically kept him under 35. So he still has 40 left to throw on Thursday, stuff, because it's the pitch counts are for the week as they're written, right?
Right.
And the other thing that I think that it's just not that, sorry, I'm going to take some down off my, one of my messages. It's not that black and white. It's just not. It's like there's way more nuance to it. Like as you said, what's the kid's mechanics like? And by the way, inside bad mechanics, as you know, Kevin, there's a big wide range. There's like it could be better. He's a little bit long, so like, oh my God, how's his arm not falling off? Right. So you have that, and then you have, is this April 3rd? Is it 46 degrees outside? Right. I mean, are this stressful for the older kids? How many innings do you have to pitch with staring at the tying run or go ahead run right there in third base? And that mental stress begets physical stress and you get tense. All these things, I think, really, they matter. They really matter. And by the way, is 100 pitches still okay in week 26? When you've been going 100 a week? I mean, so things like that. I think, we try to look also at innings. Innings is a real big thing for us too, because we get tons of kids that pitch in high school, etc. But
yes, there's definitely a common sense factor into there actually is a coaching factor into this, like knowing when it's time to go get your player and be like, you know what, you've done good, you've done great, enough, and let's come back next week. Right.
I mean? And then we talk about, say, it's a 60 pitch count or something like that, right? That could go, over 4 or 5 innings, or that could be a guy throws 32 pitches in 1 inning because he gets errors, runners on base, hits, whatever. Like the level of the amount of rest you're getting in between those pitches, things like that.
Well, too, and as you ramp up, right, so you go from, obviously, your strength, your energy level is going to be a lot higher on pitch 3 as it is in pitch 30, right? And a lot of kids, even with better arm mechanics, will tire, right? And will stop using their body. When I say better arm mechanics, I really meant better pitching mechanics, right? Use their body well, only allow their arm to go forward and down. Well, you may have a pitcher like that, but as that pitcher gets more tired, and I see this happen in softball all the time too. Softball pitchers is you see the legs go first. I'll see with softball, a girl start like understriding, right? She just can't get out there like she was before. Pitching, baseball pitching, very similar. But yeah, I mean, if you're tiring, all bets are off. I mean, who knows what you're doing? Who knows what kind of sequence you're in without a camera?
Right, and you have to watch the mechanics too when they start to
Right.
Exactly. So
the head starts moving. They're trying to leave it.
There certainly isn't a solid number. There are, as you mentioned, all those factors that you have to be cognizant of a coach, because that's your job, to coach.
That's right. If it were just the nuts, then that was sort of my point.
If not, you're just there to watch, right? But we need you to coach, which means you have to be. Let's think about this, right? Let's not just. Right.
Manage is the big one. Coaching is one thing. Managing is the real key word.
That's right. And otherwise you're just doing this, right, with a clicker and you're counting. And this is not. I'm not trying to throw blame on anybody, because first of all, I think I know we all agree about this. Like even the Little League coach who doesn't know what they're coaching, like it's an honorable thing to do. They're giving their time. That a lot of them are doing it because hey, no one else would step up. Like I want my kid to have it. So it's not their fault, But I think that there's so much more information that needs to get out there, because as we talk ad nauseum about that, these kids keep getting hurt, and so all of these factors, you need to identify when a player is getting tired. You need to be aware. You need to talk to your player, see if that player is pitching or throwing. Somewhere else, and maybe he didn't pitch in another game, or she didn't pitch in well, she's pitching's different softball, but maybe he didn't pitch another game, but maybe he played shortstop, and he's it's not just the throws on the plays, it's all the throws in between innings,
all the throws. Yep.
Right? So
warm up throws,
the bullpen before the game, right?
Absolutely.
Mike, you just inadvertently touched on kind of a follow up that I was going to throw out there.
It could have been vertently.
Vertently.
I obviously coach our in our baseball program. I don't really work too much with the softball girls right now, so I'm a little unfamiliar. Now that said, I have a 5.5-year-old daughter who's going to be playing softball in a few years. What is the difference in terms of pitch count between baseball and softball, right? I mean, I've seen,
That's easy.
I've seen softball programs where girls are throwing, 2 games in a doubleheader, the same girls pitching, things like that. So,
Oh, young Ryan. Oh,
so let's talk about that.
you're so naive.
I am very naive.
Games of a doubleheader, girls will pitch 4 out of 6 games in a weekend.
Yeah.
Some girls will pitch 5 out of 6 games.
Yeah.
There's 0 pitch count in softball. Now, I keep it since we've started this, but I don't know why. I mean, it's just habit, really. I think, if anything, I have my clicker in there. It's just something to do. But no, and look, there is a difference clearly, and I don't need a PhD to know, because softball pitchers don't get hurt like baseball pitchers. It's that simple. I mean, there's such a disparity in the differences of injuries versus not injuries, that clearly this is a better way to do it for your health. That said, I think that I don't like what I see with the softball pitching, because it's not cool. I mean, we were in a tournament, not this past fall, in the fall of 2019. And there was this one team, and I'll not mention them, but they were probably the best team in the tournament. We actually, we were right there with them. We ended up being, I think, the number 2 seed in that tournament. It was a big deal for our girls, and the number 1 seed with this team. And they had this one pitcher, right? And she was really good. She's 12 years old, and she's probably throwing, low 50s, at, I think, 40 feet at that age. So,
damn.
11-year-old girls couldn't. So, and they just I think 2 games out of the 6, they started a different girl, but by the 3rd inning, that other girl was in there. They didn't like anyone, threatening to score a run. And that's the same mentality that we've been dealing with baseball. It's like, that these grown-ups want to win more than the players, it seems like, and sometimes it doesn't seem to be a cost that they won't, be willing to give up for that. And that's the problem. But it's like, there is no comparison in terms of pitch count, because there is a pitch count in baseball, and there's not a pitch count.
Yeah. So our super fan Jason, who's on the call right here as well, he just texted me. I just looked this up. This was from now going on 30 years ago, May 11th and 12th of 1991. Creighton and Utah softball met in the longest softball game in NCAA history. The 2 teams went 31 innings in a 1-0 game, where
someone finally pulled the goalie.
Both starting pitchers went all 31 innings. Creighton's Kelly Brookhart threw 390 pitches, and Utah's Janet Womack threw 320 pitches.
Wow. That's impressive. Very impressive.
Janet, that tells you how long ago the game was.
Right.
Not a game you see anymore.
All right. What else we got?
All right, we got one more item. We have why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Our favorite segment.
So,
is somebody gonna put this? Now remember, I could Ultimate Warrior this at any minute. I'm just telling you. Is someone gonna put this on the screen so we can see this garbage?
Do you have it, Ryan?
I can pull it up.
Now,
pull it on up.
So this is a drill that I was sent for softball to get shoulder separation, meaning that the pelvis is finished moving and then the shoulder comes in last. Now, you only get that when you're actually standing and moving, because that's how you move. But wait till you see
rotation.
And wait till you see this. I thought this was actually when I first sent it to me, I thought this was like one of those like games you play at home. It's snowing out. Let's invent something so that we don't we're bored. But no, this is an actual drill. This is an actual drill that both Jason and I reached out to this person and be like, "What are you doing?" And got a response, and the response was, "Yeah, I took my 2 years of physical therapy school, so this is what we're doing." And as soon as our producer has this,
I don't have the video. Jason has the video.
Oh, for crying out loud, Ryan!
It was never sent to me.
Well,
I don't have it in my chat either. Well, so basically what the video was, because people who are listening aren't going to be able to see it anyway. The young lady was sitting down on her rump and literally throwing softballs into a net that, she would turn and finish, and then flopping to her left and literally ending up somewhere like she rolled over onto her side. And the point of the video was to get, that she was getting, hip, arm, pelvis, upper body separation. What she was doing was putting a tremendous amount of stress on her arm and her elbow because she no glute was involved and nothing. It was just a stupid drill. Now,
I got it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was sent to you. It was sent to you. This one you almost have to see. This is a hard one.
And when I first saw this drill, it had like just under 3,000 views. So 3,000 people saw this and were like, "Oh, should we do this?"
Right.
Which is the whole purpose of this podcast, right here.
Yes. And here it is.
And
I think it's important too. After we talk about, I think we should talk about the comment and one of the responses to one of our dads. I
Look
think
at this.
Important. So I'm going to try to describe.
I'm following.
Like Kevin said, sitting on her bottom, feet out extended. Okay.
And she's like probably
throwing 90 degrees to her left.
Yeah, I was gonna say not quite perpendicular, but close. Right.
But close, right? Heels down, knees are very slightly bent. So she's basically sitting with her legs extended, essentially. And she's throwing as hard as she can to her left. Her feet are out in front of her. She's turned to her left. So she's I mean, dumbfounded when I see this. Now, I think what's as important in this, and I gotta find this. I'm admitting, okay, I found it. So one of the comments, so someone had challenged this person. Okay, I don't even think this was the response of the person. This was someone coming to the person's defense. Now, this was the response. Okay. It says he attended Texas State. I'm guessing this person's talking about the coach who videoed this drill. He attended Texas State for PT, pre-physical therapy, and coach college and pro for 10 plus years. Okay. And here's the explanation. And this is a problem. And I'll tell you why. It is isolating the lower half, so the athlete doesn't have to think of using the lower half. Also, it helps clean up a deep arm action, front side activation, and continuous momentum on the takeaway and front side pull. All things
the person who wrote that has no idea what any of that means.
Exactly.
No idea. That's garbage. No idea what that means.
That's my point.
Because if they did and looked at that video, they'd be like, no.
Right.
No.
There's no front side activation at all. And then he talks about front side pull. So if there's no front side activation, there can't be front side pull. But anyway, I don't even want to give it credence to try to break it down. But the point is, if you're, if some, mom or dad or young player that really doesn't understand the game, maybe they didn't play, whatever, and they see this, they may think, well, they've obviously put some thought into this. It sounds like
thousands of views. Thousands of views.
And you have, and hey, look, you have at least this one person defending it, right? And so therein lies the problem. Which
horrible.
That's obviously not an isolated video. One thing to that, by the way, and we were talking about the baseball softball thing, and I hear hip to shoulder separation a lot in softball now, and that was seems like a couple of years ago for baseball, that was the hot thing. But the strength training videos. So look I can tell you this in preparation for doing the show. Really, most of it's we just want to riff, we want to talk. These are the conversations we have, in the office, at the farm, etc. But we always wanted to bring something to the table. The easiest thing every week, by far and away, is content for the Why Would You Do That? By far and away.
Right.
We could do,
listen, that's why we have this.
3-hour Joe Rogan podcast on just Why Would You Do That videos.
And that's why I created this podcast, because there's so much junk out there. There's so much, and you'll get someone out who defends it. So someone oh, they really must know what they're talking about. No.
That's right.
BS is BS. Okay. It's just horrible. Well,
And in this instance, when it comes to overhand throwing, it is potentially injurious. That's
right.
problematic,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
What else we got? Anything else?
That's it. Our
All
slate
right.
is clean.
Guys, great show. I think there's a lot of information there about softball, about, again, the keys for me that I'm leaving with, again, is that movement. I have always preached that movement is math, and now sport is math. And I don't mean the metrics of how far we did something of this. The actual movements to improve on your sport are fit into a math equation, and we must combine that with a movement equation to produce the best results. And hopefully you heard and saw that was the theme, essentially, of today's podcast.
Yep. And so going forward, we're going to have our math segment, which
Yep.
I think we're going to go a little bit deeper. And I touched on, I didn't try to tease it, but we're going to do it next time on the actual math of swing playing and why you want to be where you are. And then also, Kevin, we have a pretty special guest. We don't maybe let it be a surprise, but we do have a very special guest next week.
Yeah. So next
which will be very interesting.
So next week we have Dr. Luke O, who is
or we do want to say who it is.
Yeah, I'll say it. Yeah.
No surprise.
No, sorry, I didn't. Yeah, we're gonna see. Yeah. So we have Dr. Luke O. He is essentially the elbow shoulder surgeon for pretty much all of the East Coast. He works with the Boston Red Sox, and he is the foremost guy for Tommy John surgery in this part of the country. So he's coming on. He knows he's going to get grilled. And remember, surgery is not Dr. O's. It's not the surgeon's fault. If it's torn, it's torn, right? He's got to go in there. It's just everything that happens before that. But I'm sure Dr. O has tons of statistics that you just probably don't want to hear. You really don't want to hear. So,
Agreed.
Very nice gentleman. And he'll be on here next week.
See you guys next week.
All right, guys. Stay safe, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.